Hi, I'm Mike Duggan. I've been teaching restorative dentistry for over 32 years now and to over 6,000 dentists. This video shows how I do it. Real-time, mannequin-based, hands-on, point of view, and patient real. If you are a pre-dental student, an aspiring teacher, an international dentist, join me at Duggan Oral Design, dugganoraldesign.com. Looking along the arch, so you see that a lot of these walls are pretty short. Now most of the time when people make short walls, they overextend. So you try to get deeper pupillae from the beginning, and then you get taller walls, and then taller walls are harder to cut farther. Make sure you're leaning lingually all the time. But see, I can see exactly where my burr is. I can see exactly where the wall is. I can see exactly how wide it is. I can see exactly how tall the walls are. I can preserve this triangular ridge here. I can preserve this triangular ridge here a little bit more too. It's preserving the triangular ridges that keeps it from getting too wide. Okay, and just make sure all the walls are the same height as the burr, and then we're pretty close. Okay, so are you trying to go gingerly now? Really? But you don't have a facial margin. You don't have a 90-degree exit angle. You don't have a long wall. You don't have a curve. The occlusal outline in this area isn't even close to being done, and you're trying to use that to help you go gingerly. That's not going to work. So go back and do more on the occlusal outline. Okay? Oops. It's a hard habit to break. Yeah. Okay.
Definitely more difficult than the mandibular.
Yeah, how about that, huh? So let's turn the patient. Let's turn the patient this way, so that I can look along the arch exactly the way I want to go.
So I tried this one first, so then this got really wide.
Yeah, sure did.
It was fine, but then the burr slipped, or I don't know. I wasn't
Well,
looking in the right
burrs tend to slip if we aren't seeing what we're doing. So let's look along the arch this way. So look in the monitor. So this is what I'm seeing. So I can see that you're leading the burr facially instead of lingually.
Okay.
I can see that this wall is super short right here. I can see that you didn't extend into this distal pit. Okay? So why don't we just look this way, lean the burr the direction that you want, and then follow the central groove at the same pulpal floor level, and then right into the distal groove over here to pick up that pit. Then do this groove, and this groove, and this groove. And then make sure all the walls are 1.5 millimeters tall in between all those grooves, preserving the triangular ridges. Keep the end of the burr at the same level, keep the angulation of the burr the same everywhere. So that's pretty fast to get the shape that we want. You can obviously smooth that out a little bit, smooth this out a little bit. Okay, so you're trying to go gingerly. So you have a clearance, you have a margin. Are you doing amalgam or composite?
Amalgam.
Okay, so your exit angle is pretty close to 90, but come in farther before you, at the 90-degree angle, come in farther before you make the curve. Then you can put the corner of the box wherever you want. But anyway, that's a pretty good start on that corner. The axial is kind of messed up though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, and then over here, you don't really have a 90-degree angle and you got too much clearance. So when we work on the box, we're going to be looking in this position and sitting in this position. You can always make sure the burr is vertical when it's in the box. And then use an extra finger behind the burr to stabilize the handpiece when you're cutting from the margin inward here. Then take it a little bit at a time until you're really happy with your exit angle and the length of that wall and the flatness of the wall. Then join the isthmus smoothly. Then you can find the corner of the box right here, and then come away from this wall. And that's the shape of the axial wall on the lingual side. So do a little bit more cutting inward here on the facial, make a smooth curve. You can go a little bit deeper axially, but cut this way away from that wall. Then when they come together, you'll have the shape of the axial that you want. Obviously use the 50 fiber, get rid of all this excess, and then you'll see if you have any gingival clearance. But pretty close. But again, each part of it requires looking in a different direction, sitting in a different position completely. And then you're in control. All right? Cool.
Sorry.
Okay. All right. Okay, so it looks like your walls are pretty tall, huh?
Yeah.
So that sort of suggests that you're too deep pulpally. So you're keeping your burr fairly vertical here, even leaning the burr facially a little bit.
Okay.
So again, see the direction I'm seeing? So you can see what I'm seeing, and I'm seeing the angulation of the burr, and I'm seeing the wall heights. So you should be able to see the wall heights while you're doing it, and try to keep the end of the burr at about the same level everywhere. So you would have been about this tall. You would have had your pulpal form much more conservative, looking this way and just making sure you see the height of the walls and preserve the triangular ridges between these grooves, and you would have been a millimeter less deep pulpally. Now, you don't have the facial clearance, but you got too much lingual clearance, right? So again, don't go gingivaly until you're happy with the occlusal outline. And make sure your tympanoid and your head are connected to the flat area on the mannequin rod. That way things don't rotate around, slip unexpectedly. Okay. So yeah, you got too much clearance lingually. But buccally, your clearance is only like 0.2. Okay, so measure these things. And again, when we cut to the middle of the contact and then find the margin facially and lingually, the box is always exactly where it should be. That's why we always cut to the middle of the contact. Then we move out and find the clearance on the facial. Then we cut in at the right angle with the burr vertical in the box all the time. So nip out facially, find the margin, then come in straight. Adjust the angle until you're happy with a 90-degree angle. Then make the curve if you need to, but lingually, maybe put an extra finger behind the handpiece because the burr wants to slip out this way.
Okay.
So stabilize it. If you have this much clearance, you better stabilize the handpiece so the burr can't slip out and damage the margin any more than it is. But then your axial should be about right here. Okay? Once you find the wall, you can find the corner, and then that tells you where the axial wall is. But look where your axial wall is. It's super deep, right?
Yeah.
So your axial wall should have been about right here from the lingual side, and about here from the buccal side. But how far gingivally are you? Gingivally, you're way too far, aren't you? When we get rid of this excess, your gingival clearance is going to be like 1.2 or 3. So why did you go so deep gingivally? Okay, so you might not have heard the explanation with some other students, but typically if you go too deep pulpally, you're going to go too deep gingivally.
Okay.
Because you know that if you don't go too far gingivally, you won't have an axial wall. Remember what I was saying earlier? We don't care. You don't care about the axial wall, you care about the gingival clearance. Okay? So only go so far gingivally. Go 7 steps, a little bit at a time, one time, and then get just the 0.5 millimeter clearance. And even if you don't have to go gingivally to do that, because your pulpal floor gave you the gingival clearance, then leave it like that. Okay? But, we're going to try to control the gingival clearance, and that's way too much. Now get rid of the excess along the facial, get rid of the excess along the gingival facial, smooth the gingival floor. Okay, and then you can use your hand instruments and finish it up, and then you can go ahead and work on this one now. We're going to try to get a little closer to the marginal ridge with your dovetail. Get the wall heights 1.5 millimeters. Make sure the bird's leaning lingually all the time, and don't even think about going gingivaly until you get really flat walls on the facial lingual. You got to get clearance, you got to get a flat wall, you got to get a 90-degree angle on both sides, then and only then can you go gingivaly. Okay? So don't get ahead of yourself. Don't do an incomplete job on the occlusal and then try to go gingivaly. It's not going to work. All right? Cool. Oops. There we go. Okay, so let's see how we're doing over here. Alright, so you cut a lot of your triangular ridges away, but even though you cut too far, your walls are too short. They're definitely less than 1.5. So that suggests that you're not deep enough pulpally. You're not even close to being deep enough pulpally. So get deeper pulpally, just follow the central groove, right into the distal groove, which would probably be about right here. Then there's the distal buccal groove here, the buccal groove over here, the lingual groove over here. And then preserve the triangular ridges when you go from one groove to the other. Go around the triangular ridges, preserve them. Keep the bird leaning lingually all the time. But we're always trying to make sure that we preserve those triangular ridges between the grooves. And make sure you keep working on it until the walls are all the same height as the bird, basically. So you could have been much more narrow and deeper pulpally. That would have been a better choice. And see how you were so shallow, you cut all the way over almost to the adjacent tooth here. So when you're really shallow, everybody cuts too far. When you get the pulpal floor at the right position, you get taller walls, it's much safer and you're not going to cut too far. Okay, so your clearance here is a little bit too much. You have 1 millimeter instead of 0.5. Over here it's definitely more than 1 millimeter instead of 0.5, so get your clearances better. Is this a 90-degree exit angle?
No, I think a little bit.
A little bit what?
More than 90?
Well, tell me what you mean. Acute or
90, I think.
It's not 90, so is it acute or obtuse?
Obtuse?
Yes, it's definitely obtuse. So make it 90, and that'll make it easier for you to do the rest of prep. If we're doing an amalgam prep, make it 90. Okay. So when we're working the box, we're going to sit in this position here. And so if that's where the margin is, we go back to the occlusal and then cut from the margin inward. And, you know, use a nice new burr, but adjust it until you're happy with the angle. When you're happy with the angle and the length, you know, then you can go ahead and make a smooth curve to join the isthmus. And then it's easier to find where the corner of the box is, right there. Not here. You're way too deep axial. You should have been about right here. But again, when you get the occlusal outline done better, so we'll ignore this little step here. But you know, when you find them, notice I put an extra finger behind the handpiece here. So cut from the margin inward with that extra finger to help stabilize the handpiece. Wherever the margin is, we need a 90-degree angle coming in from that margin. And make sure it's far enough in so you go beyond where you want the axial. Then make a smooth curve here. Then the corner of the box would have been about right here. Okay, on the facial you could have put it maybe about right here. Cut away from this wall, cut away from this wall, and your axial should have the shape that you want and the position that you want. But again, when you have the occlusal outline done better first, it makes it much safer when you're going gingival to get the axial wall. Use a 50 fiber, trim off all the excess along the gingival margin. It's rising toward the margin. Keep it flat and horizontal to the margin, then angle the gingival floor so that you get rid of the undermined enamel, then you'll be okay. Okay, so work some more on this one. Spend some time on it. Finish it with the hand instruments and so forth. This one also very shallow. And there's a groove here to extend into, but over here you just have you should have just a little dovetail in the usual relationship to the ridge. But you have a very strange thing happening on your gingival floor. First of all, don't even think about going gingivally until you get the pulpal floor where you want it. And so you got to have your wall heights. But on the gingival floor, you're leaning your burr this way. Isn't that interesting? The pulpal floor is deeper toward the axial wall and then shallower toward the adjacent tooth. Keep it more vertical. And then keep your axial about right here instead of being way over here. But do the occlusal outline more completely first. If you have a lingual clearance, even if it's too much clearance, if you have an acute angle, which you do, then that's rough. And this is supposed to be a composite prep, right? So you don't want an acute angle, you want an obtuse angle. You don't even want 90 degrees. But right now, you're very acute.
So you put it 90 degrees, so it will be get obtuse.
Yeah, so to make it obtuse, you're going to have to move the margin way out here. You'd have to move the margin out. I mean, you have undermined enamel there, so you have to remove it. But to not just remove it, but to get an obtuse angle, you have to put the margin way out here. Now, lingually, or facially, you're okay. Your exit angle is probably a little bit obtuse, so we can live with that. Too much clearance, though. But now look this way when you're going gingivally and keep the burr at the right position axially, so your axial ends up in the right place when you go gingivally a little farther. But again, look in the way I am and you can see where you are axially. Okay? But anyway, you're going to have to go deeper pulpally first, so you might as well do that. Okay? All right. Oops. Thank you.
I have made the floor. Now I can go axial.
What did you make?
Purple floor.
Okay, of what?
Premolar.
Okay. So you're very deep pulpally.
Okay.
But are you thinking about going gingivally now?
Yeah.
But look at the facial lingual walls. You have no box. You have not made the facial lingual proximal walls at the occlusal level. On the facial, you have no clearance. You have a very acute angle. On the lingual, you have a super acute angle, right?
Yeah.
So those have to be fixed at the occlusal level before you try to go gingivally. Okay? All right. So back to the occlusal outline. You've got to make it complete. Find the clearances, find the angles, get the lengths, make the curves. All right, let's take a peek. Okay. Okay, so when I look along the arch like this, so what am I seeing? So can you tell what interests me about what I'm seeing right now?
I think the outline.
Well, I can't see the outline. What can I see? Looking in the direction I am right now, what can I see? I can see the vertical angle of the prep, right? So this is the way you lean the burr, right? So pulpal floor gets deeper toward the facial, right? So are you protecting the facial pulp horns? Just the opposite. You're trying to hit them. So let's lean the burr this direction. Now, looking the way I am, I can see that direction. If you try to do the prep, looking down the axis like this, then of course you're going to have the wrong angle. So you have to decide what angle you need to see and then make sure you're looking in the direction so that you can actually see it. So we're going to look along the arch this way and correct these angles. Now some of the walls are pretty tall because you're leaning the burr toward those walls. These walls you're undercutting a lot. So we can't do a whole lot. It's going to get a lot wider. But again, the first thing you do is make sure that when you're doing it, you're looking along the central groove so that you can see the vertical angle. And you can also see the height of the wall. You can also see the position of the isthmus. Okay, so that looks better. It's still pretty wide, but it looks a little bit smoother. Okay, so the distal pit was about here. So looking in this direction, I can see exactly where the distal pit is. And then you hit it exactly every time. Okay, so in the box, so see the exit angle there? That's very acute, isn't it? And on the occlusal part here, you have a very acute exit angle. On the gingival part, you have a very rounded area because you never really found the corner of the box. So what do we do? Okay, so we go back. And don't try to go gingerly until you're happy with the occlusal outline in the box area. So now you have a very acute angle right here. So we have to fix that. We have to make it 90 degrees like this before we try to go gingerly. So now I'm going to put an extra finger behind the burr because I'm going to have to cut way out here, and it's easy for the burr to slip outward. So put an extra finger behind the burr, but make sure you're cutting from the outside in all the time. Keep the burr vertical, but cut from the outside in. Then we check the angle, see how we're doing. We might adjust it. No, that looks pretty reasonable right now. But you can see where you had all that undermined enamel there. Now on the facial, you also have a fair amount of undermined enamel. So let's recut the facial margin at the pulpiflora level and cut in at the right angle and the right length, and then make the nice smooth curve here. So now we've got a nice wall. When we have nice walls, we can make nice corners. When we make nice corners, then we can cut away from those walls and get the nice shape for the axial wall. So that's how we do it. Whether it's upper arch or lower arch, we always do it exactly the same way. So now I have the corner, and I know the axial is going to go this way from the facial wall, and it's going to go this way from the lingual wall. But when you don't have the occlusal outline done and you haven't found nice corners, nice line angles, then who knows what the axial is going to do. It's probably going to be curved the wrong way, and that's going to be a problem. Okay? So use this same burr, get rid of the excess along the facial lingual walls, smooth out the gingival floor, ignore your axial wall, and just try to move the burr like this. Try to see how close you are to the margin gingially, and just spend some time right like this, seeing what I'm seeing, so that you know you can do this without going too deep axially. Okay, so take 10 minutes and just look in that direction, sit in that position, and see where you're making the axial wall. Then you'll never get too deep axially again. Okay? Alright, then you can start on the premolar soon. Alright, so you're a little wide in the isthmus. Your angulation doesn't look too bad. Oh, could you go and get my mirror back from her? Thank you. Okay, so looking along the arch this way, we can see how wide it is when we're doing it. Yeah. Keep it leaning lingually all the time. Don't lean it facially at all. Always leaning a little bit lingually. Your wall height here at the marginal ridge is pretty short, but we're going to do that area looking parallel to the marginal ridge, as we always do. And then we can lean the burr toward the marginal ridge. We can position it relative to the marginal ridge. We can make a dovetail going facially, make a middle extension into that groove there. So that's pretty much what we're expected to do to take care of the grooves on the distal side here. Now, you're having a real tough time with that facial margin, aren't you?
Yeah.
Okay, the burr keeps slipping outward, doesn't it?
Yeah, in all the teeth, that's where I'm having the issue.
Well, yeah, and always on one wall, the burr wants to go outward, right? So never cut outward. Never let it go outward. So here we're going to always cut from the margins inward. This one's relatively safe. Find the margin, cut straight in, get the length, make the curve, find the corner, get rid of the excess. So that wall's pretty easy. But over here, we're also going to cut from the outside in, but make sure the burr is vertical. You're undercutting. See that? How much you're undercutting? Keep the burr vertical. But when you cut from the outside in, you have to be extremely careful. If you cut from the inside out, of course, it always goes around like this. If you cut from the outside in, you have to be really careful because the burr wants to go outward. So if you have this much clearance, the burr has room to go through. So you have to be especially careful not to let it. One of the things you can do is put an extra finger here. If I put an extra finger on the handpiece, I can try to protect it from slipping outward. But you've already let it slip, you know, 1.5 millimeters beyond your margin. But that's how you prevent that from happening. Put a couple extra fingers on there, okay? Your axial wall is close, but again, make sure you're always looking this way. So always know exactly where it is and where the corners are and how deep you are axially at every point. Now just trim off the excess at the gingival margin, finish it up.
So trimming of the excess margin, that also I'm supposed to do with the 55?
Yes, the gingival, yes. Yeah, and when you're ever in the box, use the 55 where it does all the tasks in the box quite admirably. You make a nice flat gingival floor all the way to the margin. That's going to help you see how much clearance you actually have and if you have to go farther gingivally. Anyway, practice up on that a little bit. For that facial margin, you might try cutting in a couple times with an extra finger to stabilize your handpiece. All right? Cool. For the premolar. Amalgam or composite? Premolar prep, amalgam or composite?
Was it composite?
I don't know, I'm just asking you what you did.
I did amalgam.
Did amalgam, okay. So whether it's amalgam or composite, we certainly don't want an acute exit angle, do we?
No.
So you're a little bit acute right here. So, but then again, you're a little bit underextended in terms of your clearance. So move the margin out and recut an angle, and you can fix both things at once. Right?
Yep.
What about the facial side?
It just broke. I was like,
How did it break? When did it break? What were you doing when it broke?
I was had like trying to hatch it.
Yeah, you're using a hand instrument. Yeah, and the reason it broke is because you were trying to remove too much tooth structure with a hand instrument. Use the burr more. It's just a little bit of undermined enamel, a little bit of a hook that the hand instrument's designed to remove. Try to remove too much, especially on a plastic tooth like this, and it's just going to chip and break away. And that messed up your margin, didn't it? Okay. Now your exit angle on the facial side, if you ignore the chip, it's a little bit obtuse. So again, you have to decide what kind of prep you're doing. When you're looking at this direction to do the marginal ridge, lean the burr a little bit more definitely toward the marginal ridge. Get a little bit more of a dovetail going facially, and then that's separate from this little extension here. And again, you know, every prep, change your burr. Now, how would we fix this acute exit angle on the lingual? Move the margin lingually, and then recut the angle inward. So fix the prep at the occlusal level first, margin, angle, length, and then come down the corner, and then get rid of the step and match the gingival part to the occlusal part. Okay, so that's how we correct a wall. Now you have a little hook there. That's about the right amount that you can trim with a hand instrument without being dangerous. Okay, so you had a lot of excess on that facial wall that you were trying to remove with a hand instrument, and that's not a healthy thing to try. Okay, anyway, you got most of that coming along pretty well. Cool.